Well, great. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Happy Friday. And if there's anybody new to this board meeting, who've never attended before, could you introduce yourself, just in case there's somebody here that we haven't met yet? I can't. Anybody here that's new?
It's me. I'm new. Hi.
Oh, okay.
I'm Nadia. I am the Communications and Advocacy Director at LFW, so in charge of the EJC.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome. We're happy to have you here. Thank you for being here. Anybody else who's new onto this board meeting?
I'm Leslie Ashley. I'm here with the Practice of Law Board.
Great. Hi, Ashley. I mean, Leslie. It was good to see you again.
Yes, hello, and I'm Thea Jennings, staff liaison to the Practice of Law Board here as well with Michael Terasaki and Leslie.
Wonderful, wonderful. Great. And hi, Murph. Good to see you.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, SB. I'm also new to this board meeting. I met some of you at the conference planning meeting, but my name's Laura and I'm an Equal Justice Works fellow working with Michael on the Pro Bono Council.
Wonderful, wonderful. Welcome, Laura, and welcome others. Anybody else? I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay. Wonderful. Well, welcome again. It's good to have everybody here. We'll just kind of get through the minutes real quick. If the board has had a chance to look at the minutes and do I have a motion unless there's any changes or any corrections to be made in the minutes? No? Can I have a motion to accept the minutes from last meeting?
I move to accept the minutes from last meeting.
Okay, can I get a second? See who's on here. Oh, Vanna, you have your hand up. Is that for a second? I can't tell.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Great. All those in favor, just raise your hand. Okay, Bonnie, you got that. So this year is the 30th anniversary of the existence of the Access to Justice Board, when the Supreme Court, when a whole lot of folks, actually it was the work of a lot of people back then who pushed for creating something like the Access to Justice Board. And that was 30 years ago. And we will be having a reception celebration down in Olympia on October the 7th from 5 to 7. And I'm not sure if everybody here has received that. Have they, Bonnie? Because we kind of sent that out wide.
I'll put it in the chat as well, but it's gone out pretty far and wide.
Okay. And we did, and Chief Justice Gonzalez will be there. There'll be some other previous board members, board chairs, people who were involved in this whole process. And so it'll be a great time to kind of celebrate, maybe hear some anecdotes, some stories from folks who were there back in the day and folks who have been there all along. And we hope that some of you can join us. It's going to be in Olympia at the Heritage Room in Olympia, and all the information will be in the invitation that Bonnie put in the chat. So I hope that some of you will be able to join us down there. Let's see. So our strategic plan, we've been working with Jen Wardell and Michelle to put together our first strategic plan, and we've kind of crafted a vision statement, and we're currently working on a set of value statements. And we just had a meeting this morning with them, and there's still some work that we're doing with them. But some of the next steps that we want to do is to, after we're done with that, is to outreach to key external partners, yourselves, Disco and others, to get feedback from folks. And we're just trying to keep this values conversation going until we can really nail it down. Those of you that have been through a strategic planning process know how much detail goes into it. and how much thought goes into it and the different conversations that happen because of it, the new things that you learn. So, and I know that in, you know, in each board meeting, I say you'll be hearing from us soon. And soon doesn't mean like in a day or two, but it's coming. We're hoping to be able to finish off our version of the values statements for the ATJ board in the next couple of weeks. And then that will go out to everyone to take a look at. And we really will rely and look forward to your feedback on it. So let's see. So that's our strategic plan, unless anybody's got any questions or if another board member wants to add anything to what I just said. Mike, you have anything to add? Okay. Great.
Nope.
All right. Okay. Great. So then the next topic is the practice of law board, a pilot test for entity regulation. And Michael Terasaki is going to share some information about that. Mike?
Hey everyone, is my microphone and everything working here?
I can't hear you that well. You're kind of on low volume.
Let's see if we can fix that. Okay, how about that? Is that better?
Perfect. Perfect.
All right, great. Hi everyone, nice to see you all. My name is Michael Terasaki. I am the Washington Pro Bono Council Manager. I work with the county-based volunteer lawyer programs across the state. I'm here today in my capacity as a member of the Practice of Law Board. I'm joined here by Leslie and Thea. They're also here. I have kind of a little presentation that I'm gonna try to get through, but you know, Thea, Leslie, jump in if you have something to add or if it seems like I'm missing anything along the way. So let's see if I can share my PowerPoint here. Share. All right, let's try that. Can we see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hang on, because now all of you disappeared and I can't see you. All right. Okay, sorry about that. All right, let's kind of jump right into it then. What I'm here to talk about today is the entity regulation pilot project. This is something that we have proposed to the Supreme Court. The Practice Law Board and WSBA have worked together to propose this to the Supreme Court. And what exactly is this? So what is the entity regulation pilot project? Basically, it's a mechanism that is designed to test potential legal regulatory forms using data-driven methods so we can make evidence-based and sound decisions about whether to implement different types of improvements to the legal system. That was a long way of saying we want to be able to test things before we propose big rule changes. And right now we're really thinking about ways to kind of open up the practice of law so we can get new delivery methods, maybe technology-assisted delivery methods. I have a few technology-assisted graphics in this presentation today. So this picture is what ChatGPT, or I guess DALL-E, decided when I said entity regulation pilot program in Washington. So I think to get to the kind of the why of why we're doing this, it's important to kind of understand, you know, the current legal landscape and you know where we are right now. Why even bother doing this? So a lot of this is kind of taken from Craig Shank, who is another Practice of Law Board member who laid out a great kind of historical context. I've trimmed it down a lot, but historically, only individual humans licensed by the Washington Supreme Court are allowed to own law firms, share legal fees, and practice law in the state of Washington. And this system has remained the same, largely without a lot of changes for at least 100 years. So this picture here I've got is a typewriter that is 100 years old. This specific one I think is more than 100 years old, but just for illustration, got a 100-year-old typewriter that someone probably wrote their legal briefs on. So in theory, the system is great. You know, real humans trained in professional responsibility rules, you know, isolated from the bad influences of non-lawyers and their judgment. Maybe maybe it's a little bit idealistic though. So it would be great if it worked out for the people who, drafted all the RPCs and kind of set up the system. But we're not sure that in reality it's working out as well as they hoped it would. A big part of that is because that approach doesn't take into account a lot of things, like that lawyers behave badly sometimes and don't reach the standards of protection and quality that the public deserves. And even if all the lawyers are great, perfect lawyers all the time, there's just not enough of them to make our current model work for everyone who needs legal help. Just today in the Seattle Times, there were 2 King County judges who were writing about the public defense shortage. That's a huge, and the new public defense standards. I mean, that's a huge thing coming through the pipeline. And if in King County, they're worried they're not going to have enough lawyers, you better believe it's going to be bad in the rest of the state. And also right now, I mean, we're looking at ways to potentially improve moderate means because it's just not enough. It's not helping enough people. So, I mean, I mentioned those really just to point out that we just don't have enough legal services being delivered. We need to come up with something new. And all of this, especially in Washington, where we've got our big tech hub, this is on the backdrop of technology and innovative business models really transforming the legal landscape. And that second picture I have here is what I asked AI to give me a picture of when I said legal landscape. So I think this is illustrative for a couple of purposes. First, look at the tools. The tools are so much different. You can barely type out the word legal landscape on a piece of paper with that old typewriter. And I didn't even have to type legal landscape. I literally used a microphone and said legal landscape picture, please. And this is what it spit out for me. So the tools are just completely different now. And we need to kind of update our model to reflect that a little more. Oh, also, I mean, obviously this isn't the legal landscape we're talking about. But I mean, that also highlights that we can't just let people do whatever they want. There has to be some oversight. There has to be some quality control if we're going to come up with a new model here. All right, so now getting down to the pilot project itself. So first I want to start by just saying, like, what changes with this pilot project? First of all, right off the bat, nothing changes. Nothing changes at all. This doesn't just throw open the doors for anyone to try anything they want. It doesn't mean people can open non-lawyer law firms and just start, trying to make a quick buck. It's not going to crash the legal market to like $50 an hour. So some of us might actually want something like that to happen. What actually happens is a project framework and administration framework is set up so that if approved, the Supreme Court will allow specific pilot projects, potentially using technology-assisted means or maybe non-lawyers to, try whatever their model is, whatever their project is. So the only thing that really changes is that these authorized entities could offer legal and law-related services for a very specific time-limited kind of test, through a specific Supreme Court order that would allow them to try out this thing, and we'd get all the data on that. So we would know through this project what's going well, what's not going well. Is it good or bad for clients? Is it good or bad for the system? And a big part of this is kind of making sure we have the oversight. So a lot of you are familiar with taxis. They used to exist and drive people around, and now everyone uses Uber or Lyft or ride sharing solutions. And there wasn't a big piece of legislation that came through. There wasn't a slow transition. This just happened because companies figured out they could do this new thing and they did it. We want to be able to be a little more careful and regulated when it comes to legal services. We shouldn't just throw the doors open. So ideally, there'll be some safeguards here. The proposed pilot program is supposed to strike a balance between innovation and protection. So this diagram here is a little hard to see, but it's actually kind of like a 3D diagram. So the idea is projects that would be approved, they're in green, are things that would help impact the access to justice gap and would not be very risky, and we would know sooner rather than later whether or not they're working, right? So if there's something that seems really risky and you know, we might not know about the damage for 40 years. It's probably not a good project to propose under this pilot program, because we want to be able to have the data and make some policy decisions with it. So personally, and Thea and Leslie haven't heard me talk about this before, so might be surprised to them. I think the types of programs I'm expecting to see are things like adding a CPA to a tax law practice, maybe as a partner. The type of things that honestly are kind of happening already, just through, you know, legal frameworks that make them not violate the RPCs. Low-hanging fruit things, current law firms using more technology assistance in intakes, in, you know, document generation. If you go to a doctor's office right now, your doctor is probably sitting there typing away on a computer the whole time, and that computer is probably recommending them things to check, potential conditions to check for, things to say to you. There's no reason why lawyers can't use similar tools like that. And I also think there's a huge opportunity for what I think of as kind of the low risk legal assistance. I'm thinking legal help with understanding and deciding what to do with traffic tickets. You know, low risk things that the information isn't even that complicated on a lot of the time. And what I'm not expecting, I think is a big thing to mention, is anything that seems really risky, or anything that is talking about authorizing, you know, representation of parties in direct conflict. You know, like I said, the Supreme Court will issue a specific authorizing order. I don't expect the Washington Supreme Court justices to actively review every single proposal, but I think they will not be keen on authorizing things that are, you know, blatantly really risky. Okay, so looking ahead, I don't have any pictures on this one, so you'll just have to look at my big orange blocks here, or big pink blocks here. So what happens? Hopefully we get this project approved and we start getting some data in. So hopefully we'll be able to see some projects that are great and we think they're doing great, and potentially they'll get, you know, a permanent order letting them continue whatever it is they're doing. And the overall goal is, you know, kind of like I started at the beginning, innovative legal environment in Washington, so we can kind of update the way that we're regulating and doing our practice of law. And the last thing I'm going to say is really for this group, like, this is the Access to Justice Board. This is why I am so excited about this project. You know, I think, first of all ships are going to rise if we can just get more legal services out there, more good legal services. We're lacking the services at every income. You all know this, I don't need to talk about that. So we should be able to get some real, just general increase in the amount of services we can get. And then there's a couple of specific models we already have in other parts of the country that I think this really opens the door to, maybe not specifically through this project, excuse me, but if not through this project, then I think it kind of paves the way for us to do some more work on better, more accessible legal models. The Rio Grande Legal Aid Organization has a hub and spoke model of paralegals that go out and do legal services. They're supervised by a central supervising attorney, but, you know, they're actually able to do the legal services. As you know, they're supervised, they're competent, but that, you know, one supervising attorney can't see 100 clients in a day. An attorney supervising 5 paralegals maybe could, if they were really hustling. And in Alaska, they have a community justice worker program, and I have a feeling many of you are familiar with this, but this is basically a system of non-lawyers who are authorized and trained to do some very specific legal things. DVPOs, wills, public benefits assistance, and the subjects are growing as they create more training materials. And how do they learn that? Through self-paced online training courses. So equipping our own communities, people in our own communities, to do that work themselves and for their communities, and passing that on. Can you imagine? We can do that here. I just, you know, need everyone's support and probably a lot of money, but we can do that. So that's where I'm going to leave you. But Thea, Leslie, jump on in. I'm sure I missed something.
I guess I would add that as far as where we are right now in the process, the board, our board, the Practice of Law Board, as well as the WSBA Board of Governors and the Bar Association have been collecting comments on the proposal in anticipation of sending it to the court by the end of the month. We've received about 32 comments at this point to inform the final product that goes to the court, as well as any implementation that may come in the future if the court does order the pilot project to proceed. And thank you, Michael, for that presentation.
Thank you, Michael. And I guess all I would say is as far as like the need, I mean, we all know the need. We're all on boards and we're all interested in increasing access to justice. And I think typewriters work, right? They work, but it's not the most efficient use of the technology that we have available today, nor is it going to translate into efficient and accessible services for other people, right? If we're talking about a typewriter, everybody would have to have a typewriter and like all of those things. And so I think that that is a big part of this project, is the ability and possibility of increasing efficiency and access, especially into rural areas, which is a particular issue of mine. And then the other thing I think, like Michael touched on, is like I call it the Uber model, but it's going to happen anyways. And so either we have the opportunity to, I guess, get out in front of it or forever be chasing that 8 ball. And I guess that's my pitch.
I think there's a couple questions. I think, Jim, about, either suspending or changing GR24. I think the idea is that the pilot projects that are proposed would receive a specific Supreme Court authorizing order that would, grant them access despite the current regulatory framework. So we wouldn't necessarily be changing things on the fly to allow for flexibility. And then, if it doesn't work out, then we don't have to change everything back afterwards. And then, sorry, Thea, you want to jump in with that?
Really, all I would say is that the orders would provide specific exceptions to participants to rules governing the practice of law.
And then Murph, I see your question. Yeah, so I mean, kind of similarly, the idea isn't necessarily to remove the entity restriction, but to have a specific granting order that would allow for a specific type of legal service by a specific entity. So it would author the entity and exactly what authorize the entity and exactly what they're supposed to do. And then hopefully it goes really well, and then the Supreme Court says, great, let's keep it, and either extends that order indefinitely, or maybe even better, we can actually use that as a basis to propose some larger rule changes so everyone doesn't have to continue proposing pilot projects.
You see the other comment there from Murph?
I do now. Yes, I see that. Yeah, well, I think the comparison that we use the Uber model for is just the spontaneous deregulation. I'm hoping the organizations that would probably do something like this. I would be surprised if a for-profit organization was interested in trying to make money off of a community justice worker model. But that's certainly something we keep out for. I was hoping.
Never underestimate that possibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I could add, the goal is to be collecting data and information from the participants on an ongoing basis. There'll be a regular reporting schedule. The board and the Bar Association, as they review these applications, will be identifying the kinds of information and data that we want to collect with a goal towards protecting the public. So hopefully any business models or any participants that are proposing participation in the pilot, we could frame the test and data collection around the idea of protection of the public, which could, of course, include a number of issues that might arise when talking about reviewing and regulating these entities.
And additionally, kind of in response to Murph's questions in the chat, but Washington's I guess is a little bit different than Utah and Arizona in that from the outset, our proposal is that there be a public need that you can demonstrate is being met. That's part of the data collection. So it's not really geared towards for-profit. Obviously, I agree with, I can't remember who it was that said never underestimate. I completely agree with that. But the goal is to increase, to demonstrate how you can meet a specific need that is missing from in our current practice of law.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah,
I put my
Abby,
hand up.
yeah.
Just, hi all, Abby
Yeah.
from NJP, Michael and Thea and Leslie, thank you so much for your work. I wasn't at the Pathways, was it just yesterday? And I hope that it's a really great, conversation and discussion and learning that was there. My question has to do with all of the other places in our system where we already have non-lawyers providing access, and whether or not there's the same amount of energy there to support like suitable reps and others that can represent people in front of OAH, for example, or immigration proceedings where you can have non-lawyers in that work, or tribal courts where you can have non-lawyers representing people. I feel like there's all of these existing ways that we could be providing representation, and those systems there's not investment there to make sure that we've got lay folks or other professionals trained to provide that important access. And so I wasn't sure if it was covered yesterday, cool. If not, we might need to open up that conversation, because I think that deserves as much attention as our techno optimists are here for these other pieces. But on the people side, there's a lot of openings already for non-lawyers to do that work. So just a question maybe about if that work is happening elsewhere, and if it isn't, whether or not we should raise that from the ATJ perspective.
Yeah, so this entity pilot project is, I think that's out of scope of this project. I think that's great though. If someone else might have something, I don't know if it was really discussed yesterday at the summit, but there was a lot of things discussed yesterday at the summit, and I'm happy to nominate you, Abby, as the new person to put together a committee and work on that. I'll support you.
Okay, thank you both. Diana and then Jim.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and maybe this is farther down the line, you don't know the answer, but in terms of if hopefully the order will be entered by the court, and I know there's a time, it's all laid out in terms of how it will work, but I was wondering about time frame, and maybe I missed it, how that would work, and also I guess I'm thinking about funding. So kind of to Murph's point, or to your point, oh, we could start a spoken hub or community justice worker that's based on Alaska's model, but obviously that takes money. And also it sounds like you need to pay into being pilot tested. So I was just wondering how the timeline works, that if there were organizations interested in participating in this pilot, they may need to raise money to be able to afford to be part of it and to pilot something. So I was just wondering how that plays into the timeline of this whole program.
Essentially what I would say to that is that the way that it's been framed is that participants would apply, they would be given an authorizing order, and their participation would be for a period of collecting reporting. So we don't know how many applicants we're going to get, so we don't really know the scope of how long this pilot is going to continue. But the idea is that once we've identified the last participant to become or to participate in the pilot, and the court has ordered that entity to participate, or that participant to participate, we would collect 2 years of reporting from that entity, and that would be when the pilot would conclude. So that doesn't mean that there might not be some gear up time for participants to be involved, and there will be a window of time for participants to apply. The timeline at this point isn't fully set, given that we want to be flexible and we don't really know what we're going to get at this point from participants. So I guess I would say that the timeline would depend on how many applicants we get and what the last identified applicant is, and when we start actually collecting reporting from them. I hope that's clear. But so there's some flexibility in the timeline, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Diana? Okay.
Jim, and also I want to, let's see. Is there a way for organizations to contact to be considered? Well, that's kind of a little bit of what Diana was talking about, be considered for the project. So there's a question in the chat, and then Jim had something.
We have an email, an active email account for this project called that is Entity Regulation Pilot at WSBA.org. So we've already gotten some comments from entities that might be interested in participating, and we welcome continued communications and contacts and comments on the idea of the pilot project at that email account, as well as any open questions that people might have that they want to reach out to us about.
Okay, great. Jim?
Thank you. And let me just be clear. I am and have been throughout very supportive of this effort, but I do think, and it'll be very interesting to see once you do requests for proposals and what the framework of those requests will be, who is responsive. But I do want to caution that there have been over the last 15 plus years, and currently there are private sector initiatives designed to build on emerging and generative technologies that will effectively operate to make quote unquote lawyers available on low cost, no cost basis on a universal basis. And the most recent one with which I am familiar is the one that is focused, that kind of touched and concerned the appointed counsel program for tenants. I don't know where that conversation has gone since I left, but it's really quite frightening to see the kinds of niches and the kinds of marketing and the kinds of risks for consumer exploitation that these initiatives are going to bring to the table. I just think anytime you're doing an environmental scan on what, going back to your risk diagram, Michael, what the risk, what the return is, what the data is, what the timeline is, it is important to not only look at what the access to justice system has and what the need is, but what the private sector is doing today and what it will be doing tomorrow.
Thank
you. One of the things that I hope we get out of having an official formal pilot program is some sort of not necessarily like a logo or something, but a way to actually show that the people that are approved to do this work do this, because there are people doing this already at a variety of different levels of quality and for-profit and non-profitness, and consumers deserve to know whether or not the program that they're receiving their information and their work from is supposed to be doing it or not supposed to be doing it. I would love if the AGs would shut down a lot of the online legal service providers, because some of them are pretty bad, but the reality is they're just not going to. It's a whack-a-mole. You can't get them all, and at least we should be able to say, these are the ones that have authorization and should be of sufficient quality, and consumers can then at least know or not, you know, take their risk if they're going to use use someone who's really cheap and shady.
So you're talking about having like a seal or something, so kind of like.
I mean,
this is organic.
we haven't officially planned that, but I would think if I was operating something, I would want to make sure people knew I was allowed to do it and I wasn't, you know,
Mhm.
doing a bad job and completely unsupervised on something that traditionally you're supposed to have a bar degree to do. So it's
Yeah.
a pretty, you know, I'm hoping we can get some, you know, increased scrutiny on the bad actors and a way to showcase the good ones.
Mhm. Thank you, Michael. Murph?
Yeah, thanks for everybody's work on this. I appreciate all the innovation. I think it's great. I think it'll be great to see what comes out of the pilot projects. I'm curious if the ATJ board has weighed in support. And then I was wondering what folks have and putting the court order together and the WSBA around how race equity fits in with this, and to be mindful of creating a second class for particularly for folks of color, because we know the demographics of attorneys and that folks are underrepresented, and then folks might be overrepresented here in this. And there's all the work on the pipeline project and particularly in rural areas and trying to get more folks in the profession. And so I think about that, and then I also think about what kind of representation clients get, and whether or not this increases the race equity gap, that clients who have language justice might get a justice worker, whereas a white client with the same legal need would get a white attorney. And so I'm just curious about those kinds of things. It's not really a criticism, it's just something, just an analysis to think about.
Thank you, Murph. And this conversation is also for the board to learn about the pilot project. And so I think that, you know, there's a lot of really good questions that have been raised for Mike and the team to consider as this moves forward. And it's a pilot project. So I think we're going to find out what works and what doesn't work. That's what happens with a pilot project and when you're trying to collect data. And but we all know that we need to start doing something a little different because of what you just mentioned, Murph, and the gaps, the huge gaps. And it's possible that new things that we try can create new problems, but that's the point of trying something, right? If there's a problem that wasn't anticipated or unintended consequences that nobody saw, that's then we rearrange, we regroup, we figure it out. But that's creative problem solving, I guess. So thank you for Michael and the team for doing the work around this. And I hear you loud and clear, Jim, about the frightening situation with the private sector looking, because they're always looking for ways of making a buck, right? And they don't have any shame in doing it in any arena, because they're not really concerned whether somebody gets the services they need. They're just concerned that they can make a buck. And so I like the idea of having some way of distinguishing somebody who's doing this work and who has kind of this stamp of approval, or, you know, for lack of a better word, on doing this work, and who has received the training, the expertise, what have you, as opposed to somebody that has not. The community needs to be able to tell the difference. But then how do you get that information out to the community so they know that, right? So there's still a lot to do. Thank you very much for that presentation and for the really thoughtful questions. And I think there's going to be a lot more questions that'll come up, but we'll learn a lot from this as well. So any other comments or questions before we move on to the next?
I was hoping just to, in answer to Murph's question, just point out that today is the deadline for comments for the package that will go to the court. However, we will, to the extent the court enters an order, we'll be going through an implementation phase. And we welcome this board's ideas and thoughts about how best to craft and think through implementation of this project, including the kinds of data and information that might be helpful to answer some of those questions or to be thinking about how best to implement this project. I would also say that this board may choose on its own to send its comment to the court directly after the project goes to, or the proposal goes to the court at the end of September. So we welcome your thoughts. You guys have great access to communities and groups of individuals who can provide good insights into how we might think about implementing this project. So we appreciate your time and your efforts and any commentary you might provide to us as we move forward.
Great, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
And I would just say thank you for allowing us to come present today. And I guess I would say your guys' opinion matters a lot because you're working with the people that I hope that we're able to help. So
wonderful. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, so before we go on to the equal justice, Nadia, if you forgive me, I want to take a couple of minutes to do something before these two people might jump off and I don't get to do it. We have been in the process of recruiting board members, and one of the reasons that we're doing that is because there are two board members that are going to be rolling off that we're going to miss a lot. Judge Keenan, Dave Keenan, and Terry Price will be, this is their last meeting. And so I just want to say that they will be receiving the Flame of Justice Award on behalf of the Access to Justice Board. These are two individuals who went way above and beyond their job description. A judge has a lot to do. You got a million things on your plate. And there aren't a lot of judges. There are some, but there aren't a lot of judges who will go above and beyond and get involved in as many efforts as you have to make access to justice a reality, Judge Keenan. And you have on the board have helped with so many efforts around this issue. You, on top of it, working with the board on our own equity process, figuring out how we walk our talk, and work with in the committee to help lead that work within the board. Your work around rules and when I think about it, I was going to make a list of all the things that you have done on the board, and it just started getting ridiculous. And I thought we need to just recognize the fact that you model what's possible in the judiciary. And just imagine if just even 50% of the judiciary were like Dave, be like Dave, you know? And so on behalf of the board, and I'm sure on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much for the contributions you made to the board, for making us better, stronger, having us walk our talk around race equity, diversity, and inclusion. And Terry, you work at the University of Washington. You're an educator, and you shape the minds of the people in law school. These are the young men and women who are hoping to have a career doing what many of you do on a daily basis. And the fact that you're on the Access to Justice Board, you take those principles and those values back into your classroom. And I know they come out when you're talking to your students. I know that they are part of your curriculum, and that because of that, you know, we've talked about the what is it that law students learn in law school? Well, if we have more professors like Terry Price teaching future attorneys, we'll have a better chance of having attorneys who actually think about equity, think about justice, think about access, and those communities that are often left out. And because of that, we want to honor you. And I wish we could do a parade, you know, so that we can really show you. But this is our way of saying by sending this award to you. You're going to be receiving it at home. in about another week or so. But thank you, both of you, truly, for your commitment, your passion. And we know that you'll continue doing this work. And I know, you know, there's some work that you're going to keep doing with us, but it's not going to be at the level you've been doing it. But we also know that you're going to be out there continuing to work for access to justice. So thank you so much. And please join me in thanking these incredible people for the work that they've done. And I don't know if you want to.
Thank you, Terry and Dave,
Yeah.
for all that you've done.
Mhm.
You guys have really made an impact on how I felt, and you've always included me. And every time I called or reached out, you guys responded, and I appreciate you so much. Gratitude, and good luck on your next chapter. If I need you, I'm gonna reach out again.
Well, thank you, everybody. I didn't want us to end this meeting without making sure we did that. So we'll go back to our agenda. And Nadia, where are you at? I think you're still here.
Yeah,
Yes, there
I'm
you are.
here. Hello. I mean, the major update is that I'm new. So hello, I'm new to the space and still getting connected and still learning. So give me some grace as I figure everything out. But as far as the state budget, we've met with OCLA, the EJC. We have another meeting with OCLA later this month to discuss their proposal. I don't have a lot more information on that, but we're getting there. We're talking to them and figuring it out. And with the county, I'm planning to convene the EJC stakeholder group in October to discuss more about the budget and the proposal. And I'm working with King County providers to convene that group later this month, and also working with Spokane County providers. But after some conversations, not sure that they'll have an ask for the county for this budget cycle, just because they've been a little disconnected up to this point. And so, yeah, figuring all of that out. And I think that that's pretty much it with the EJC.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Nadia. Okay, funding reports. We have federal and TBD. I don't know if we have anybody that's doing that half, but if not, then Sarah, if you're here.
I'm happy just to interject very quickly. Abby
Great,
from
Abby.
NJP,
Thanks, Abby.
currently serving as co-executive director with Hickory Gateless. And one of the last parting gifts that Cesar gave us was a quick phone call to Senator Murray to make sure that they held fast on the funding request from LFW. It's 1.8 for the next year starting in January. I'll put a link in the chat for what the budget request was in case anyone's curious. No other updates since then. But I also wanted to share, and I'll also share this in the chat, that LSC has, the Legal Services Corporation has issued their report of 2023 by the numbers. And so it's just useful, I think, for us to just see ourselves in the context of what's happening across the country with at least the organizations that report to LSC, just to get a sense for how our trends are the same or different in terms of sort of the avalanche of housing that's taken over all of the country, and the ways that different practice areas have been flowed depending on what needs we're seeing out there. So I'll put that in the chat as well. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Abby. Sarah, are you still with us? Oh, there you are.
I am. Hi, everybody. So we are here at OCLA. We are just putting all of the finishing up our decision packages to submit for the upcoming legislative session. We have a number of fairly modest proposals based on what the state budget outlook is looking like. I don't have the exact numbers yet for the NJP, EJC decision package, but we'll have that. It'll be finalized likely by the end of today. But as just sort of an overall picture, we're asking for a vendor rate adjustment, which is essentially like an inflation adjustment. We are asking for some specific funding to bring some of our smaller subcontracted programs to be able to cover healthcare costs and some of the other infrastructure costs that have seen really dramatic increases over the last couple of years. And then for really, I mean, it's NJP, but really for the Alliance, we are asking for an increase in clear capacity. You know, with the demand that our statewide hotline sees on a daily basis, I was really blown away by just the sheer volume of calls that there just couldn't humanly be answered with the capacity that they have. So we are really hoping that as we're looking, you know, in other ways, looking at access issues and, you know, this is one of the ways that we want to start to increase our capacity across the state around access. We have, for our other contracts, we're asking for inflation, vendor rate adjustments sort of across the board with our programs. And I will have everything to share publicly, probably by the end of next week. It will go out, and this will all be reviewed by the oversight committee, our oversight committee on the 27th.
Great.
So we're getting close.
Yeah. Thank you. I know you've been very, very busy. Yeah. So next report from Alex.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all. I'm very happy to have Nadia joining us as our new EJC director. We didn't have anyone for a few months, so it's very exciting. I'll give a quick update on what's been happening with the campaign over the summer. We've been pretty busy with our events and preparing for our fall campaigns. We started a new 2-year county rotation plan for our Beer and Justice fundraising event series. So I think most of you are probably familiar with that series, but we travel around the state and host mid-size events at local breweries or wineries. So the new goal with this plan is to allow us more flexibility to add new counties each year so we can expand our reach and connect with more legal aid communities. So this summer we've had 3 events so far. We have 3 more in the fall. Our next one is coming up on September 26th in Yakima. And yeah, so pretty exciting. And then in addition to our events, we're ramping up for our upcoming Associates campaign. That'll start the same week as National Pro Bono Week kicks off. And then that goes on for 2 full weeks. Our goal is to raise $250,000 during those 2 weeks. And then another big campaign happening kind of around the same time is our big King County and Pierce County law firm campaign. So the goal this year is to raise $615,000 through that campaign. And then lastly, you're going to hear me bring this up every time we meet, but I want you to start saving the date for our Goldmark fundraiser next year. It's going to be on Valentine's Day, February 14th. Same as usual, luncheon, but just make sure you have that date saved. So that's it.
Got you. Thank you. Wow. Ambitious goals, and you're going to meet them. That's great. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Alex, for reporting that and for letting us know ahead of time about the Goldmark on Valentine's Day. We love doing this work, so we'll be there. Okay. Well, are there any announcements? Anything that people want to make sure and share? Yes, Lily, did you have your hand up?
Yes. First of all, thanks to all of you who support our Seattle U Law students. I look across this screen and so many of you do so much for our students. So thank you so much. Our law school's evening with Equal Justice will take place on Thursday, October 17th from 5 o'clock to 7:30. It is our largest public interest networking event. Our keynote this year will be Paulo Sai, who is a member of Microsoft's pro bono team and works with many legal aid organizations to promote public interest and also to help with finding Equal Justice Works fellows, because I think I saw Laura mention that.
Mhm.
We invite public interest attorneys to sign up. We're hoping for 2 to 3 attorneys in each practice area to sign up. I sent an email out through the ATJ listserv last week. Please consider registering or spreading the word with people that would be interested in attending. And on behalf of our students, thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you. Good event every year, thank you. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I have one, Columbia Legal Services Open House is Wednesday at our offices from 4:30 to 6:30, and hope to see folks there.
Say the time again?
4:30 to 6:30.
Okay, great. Thank you, thank you. Anyone else? Just a reminder to have on your calendar the Access to Justice Conference for next year, September 18th through 19th in Yakima. Please hold those dates. We hope we see everybody there.
Thanks, SB.
Sure.
Just a
Yes,
very
Abby?
busy fall calendar for everybody. In between all of your back to school stuff, there's also all the fundraisers. The Jubilee for Justice for Northwest Justice Project is on Tuesday, 10/1. I put the link in the chat. It's free to register, but we want to get your information in so that we make sure we have plenty of food. And we are excited to celebrate with y'all. Thanks.
Boy, it is a busy fall, isn't it? Yeah, that's great. And a lot of good things happening. I also just wanted to really quick give a shout out to the folks who did such an incredible job in the Pathways to Equity Summit that was held in Ellensburg yesterday. It was powerful. There's a lot of learning and a lot of networking, a lot of innovative ideas about what to do to create more equity within our justice system, what to do to create more of what we don't have enough of. And so thank you to everyone. Thank you, Bonnie. Selena was just monster in putting this thing together and keeping everything going, and Bonnie and Diana and so many others from WISPA who put this together. So thank you. And I know there are some people that I see here that were at that summit yesterday. Let's see. Unless there's anything else, I think that's it. And we're, boy, 11:30, it's 11:29, okay? Talk about staying on time. I'm doing it, Terry. Yeah, we're gonna miss you too, really, a lot. So thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend, okay? Bye-bye.